Welcome to MedMan. My name is Pim Roelofsen.
And I'm Andy Whyte.
And today we're going to talk about MEDDICC for SEs. So Andy, we know that SEs are always a very essential part of the typical account team working a deal, right?
The brains.
The brains, exactly. And we cannot get the deals across the lines without them, right?
No.
And some of our customers have been bringing this question up quite a few times. And I think lately more than ever before. It's like, do you include SEs when you are on this MEDDPICC journey, with the MEDDPICC adoption, right? Do you make them part of it? Mm-hmm. And so I think that today is all about discussing that. What do we think? What is our advice back to these customers? So what are your first thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I think, I think of MEDDICC as a common language. And a common language is most best spoken when it's spoken across the most number of people, the most number of stakeholders internally. And there is no stakeholder that is involved in the deal more commonly than the SE. They're there from when the deal is qualified normally. So they're there from the earlier stages, sometimes from the very beginning, depending on how you're set up. And they're the person that when they're not, doing their part, which is, the technical expertise, they're the person basically seeing everything that's going on. They're seeing the customer's reaction to what you say. You can't look at everyone at the same time, but they might have while you're speaking in particular, they have a view of everyone they have. And the thing that I don't think people talk about enough actually is no one really has as much deal experience as SEs, because even if you're an AE, SEs are typically 2-to-1 AEs, 3-to-1 AEs. I've worked at companies where there's one SE for 5 or 6 salespeople, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They're getting deal after deal, and they're getting to see and feel and get a real good, university of deal craft, and what they will see not just how customers react, but they'll see how one AE does one thing that works very well or not, and they'll get so their like deal intuition is probably second to none.
I agree. Have you had situations like these ratios? I recognize them. I've had a few of them. I also had a 1-to-1 ratio, which was great.
Yeah.
Have you had a time where there was an absence of an AE or of an SE for a short while and you had to do it without?
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends, in my career, it depends what technology I was selling as to how much of a problem that would be.
For sure.
But yeah, from some points where it was just, I couldn't sell. And there was no way, unless I got lucky, I was not selling without an SE. Other times, I knew the product very well, and it was by nature lower complexity, so I was able to get my head around it.
So on that scale, higher complexity, it's a little bit of love for SEs. I'm sure that we both share that. We typically tend to say no champion, no deal. Strong belief, right? Yeah. It's also true to SEs to an extent, right? No SE, no deal. And then the more complex the sale, the more competitive it gets, the more that applies, I would say. Yeah. And while you were talking just now, that you and I, we both follow one sport in particular. We both do that, right? With F1. And I was just thinking about if you are an AE, and you imagine yourself being the F1 driver, right? You are on track. Yeah. You have someone in your garage next to the track sitting there analyzing, with the help of a further team, of course, but analyzing when to make the right calls for the right things, when to go in for tires, when to push harder, when to slow down a little bit to conserve and be able to finish the race, right? And I was thinking about this is much like a sales cycle, really. But if for some reason that engineer sitting on the side of the track doesn't have the ability to have that conversation with you, speak in the same language, like how are you gonna win that, right? How does that resonate?
Well, I like that analogy. You can almost imagine it a bit like, when you picture yourself in that deal review, the deal review with MEDDICC, the deal review without MEDDICC. Yeah. And it's like the salesperson starts talking about their deal without MEDDICC, and it's just trying to make sense of it is often a lot of waffle or fluff, as different countries say. And I think that's the same thing goes for the conversation with the SE and the AE about the deal. If there's no framework, no language to talk about, they might be talking about the same thing differently. Or, one person might be talking about, they could still use a term like champion, but if you don't have a definition of what a champion has to be, then, one person might be, you're arguing over whether a person's a champion based on different criteria. And so, everything starts to, you're not going to be able to tap into this great asset of someone who's already said has a great intuition about deals, has as good a sort of view of your deal as you do because they've been there all along, you're not going to be able to maximize the potential for that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So effectively what we are saying is that the SE, a lot of deal coverage there. If not part of it, you're not able to converse within the same language, within that common language across the team. And essentially you won't be able to focus on the right things in the right deals.
Yeah, right? And then another big thing on this topic, because this is a topic I love, is we in sales, we talk about being single-threaded a lot, right? We talk about how the salesperson should not be single-threaded to the organization, meaning that they're just one person within the customer's organization they're talking to, right? Yeah. And that's common sense, right? You should, because, if anything goes wrong, you haven't got anyone else to talk to if that person leaves, anything like that, right? And that makes sense, and people will debate whether it should be 5 or 10 or however many people. And that depends on all kinds of different things. The thing that we never ever talk about in our industry, which I think is kind of a bit daft, is the reverse single-threading. That's right. So typically in deals, it's the salesperson that owns all of the relationships, right? Typically, you might have like a good exec team who are trying to connect with the economic buyer and all that sort of good stuff, of course. But typically, the day-to-day team, everything, for whatever reason, in our industry tends to go through the AE. And I think that's a missed opportunity. Some of the greatest teams I see, particularly SE teams, they take ownership of the technical contacts. So, whilst the AE may maintain the relationship with their champion, the SE will build a relationship with their technical counterpart and build a technical champion, which I think is something that's just so good, because we know this, right? We know that the customer, when it comes to technical matters, they don't want to hear from the salesperson. They want to hear from the expert, the sales engineer, because they have more credibility. They know they're not specifically a salesperson, and for all the right reasons, right? As much as we as salespeople dislike that, that's the truth, and that's how it should be. And so why wouldn't we lean into that? Why wouldn't we push, give the opportunity to engage SEs to do that? And the other thing that's really good about this as well is, even if you're doing everything right in a deal, sometimes customers go quiet on us. There's a period of time when they're in heavy decision mode, or for whatever reason, there's another priority that's popped up. And sometimes even if we have a great champion, they kind of pause on us. They can just keep us in a holding pattern. Yeah. The great thing about having an SE that has a technical contact is it's someone sort of outside of that sort of commercial group who we can ask to get an inside track of what's going on. And the amount of times I'm going to give a shout out to one of the greatest SEs I've ever worked with, a guy called Ben Kennedy. The amount of times I would be able to lean on Ben and say, "Look, Ben, I'm not sure what's going on here. Can you find out?" And he would drop an email or a text or something to his counterpart, and you'd get the unofficial what's going on, and it would help you realign if you had to, or take action if you need to.
I also think that if you don't do this, the chances of influencing decision criteria are that much lower, right? Because typically these things are largely also made on the technical side of the house for a customer. If we don't tap into that, or if we only do that single-threaded, as you said, from an AE perspective, you cannot really go into the depth that you need to truly, sort of transform it into the way that you would have your solution land in the best possible way.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. SEs, you get them MEDDICing.
Absolutely, that's it. I'll say cheers to that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Pim. Cheers.
Cheers.